All those rumors about us not getting along all happened because Pretty Woman, and the press is still, talking to her like Eric's little sister. One day she got sick of it and said, I don't want to hear his name anymore.
Julia Roberts was America's sweetheart, but fame has a shadow. For decades, she kept it polished. Now, the cracks are beginning to show. Behind closed doors were rivalries, betrayals, and moments that left scars deeper than any script revealed. And now, for the first time, Julia's silence is over. This isn't the fairy tale Hollywood sold you. This is the truth behind the smile. The smile that held it all together. If you grew up in the 1990s, the year Pretty Woman was released, then you already know the kind of impact Julia Roberts had on pop culture. The film didn't just introduce a star, it redefined what a leading woman could look and sound like. With her wide eyes, contagious laugh, and that unforgettable smile, Julia became the face of a new era in Hollywood. She wasn't born into fame, but once it found her, it stuck. Her smile wasn't just iconic. It made people feel like everything was okay, even when it wasn't. From her earliest roles to her biggest blockbusters, Julia brought a warmth that lit up every room and every screen. Romantic comedies like Notting Hill, Runaway Bride, and My Best Friend's Wedding didn't just do well. They became pop culture staples. Because when Julia Roberts was on screen, you weren't just invested in the character. You were invested in her. She made falling in love feel genuine and heartbreak feel personal. And through it all, that signature smile never seemed to fade. However, even the brightest smile has its limits. Behind Julia's charm was someone quietly carrying more than the public ever saw. Being America's sweetheart wasn't just about applause and magazine covers. It meant staying calm when things got messy, being gracious when others weren't, and learning to smile through moments that didn't feel kind at all. Over the years, Julia stayed mostly quiet about what happened behind the scenes. If something went wrong, she moved on. Or at least, that's how it looked from the outside. But every now and then, something slipped through. A reunion she didn't attend, a project she walked away from, and a silent decision never to work with someone again. You didn't need a headline to know there was more to the story. You just had to look a little closer. That's why we're here now. Julia's silence wasn't about forgetting. It was her way of protecting herself. But at 58, something has changed. Her interviews still carry that warmth she's known for, but there's a quiet honesty beginning to show. She hasn't erased the past. She's just finally ready to speak on her own terms. However, before we delve into the names of people she detests, we need to revisit where it all began. So where did that strength come from? How did a young girl from a small town in Georgia grow into one of Hollywood's biggest stars while holding on to stories she never shared? To truly understand Julia Roberts, we have to start at the very beginning. From Georgia to global icon. Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia, a suburb just outside Atlanta. Her parents, Betty Lou and Walter Grady Roberts, shared a deep love for the arts. They ran a small acting school for children and spent their free time working on plays and local performances. It was a creative but modest environment. While Julia grew up surrounded by actors, scripts, and rehearsals, her earliest dream was far from the spotlight. As a child, she wanted to become a veterinarian. Yeah, you heard right. After graduating from high school, Julia took a bold step by following her older brother, Eric Roberts, to New York City. He was already making a name for himself as an actor, and she decided to explore the same path. She signed with a modeling agency and started taking acting classes. Life in the city was tough. She worked part-time jobs, went to auditions, and faced more rejections than callbacks. But she stayed focused and kept showing up. The opportunities were small at first, but something about her stood out. Her first notable role came in the 1988 film Satisfaction. The movie didn't make a big splash, but it marked the beginning of her career. That same year, she starred in Mystic Pizza, a coming-of-age film that put her on the map. While it wasn't a massive box office success, Julia's performance drew attention. She had something unique, a screen presence that felt both natural and magnetic. It wasn't just about beauty or talent. Julia had an energy that made people lean in. In 1989, she took on the role of Shelby in Steel Magnolias, a young woman facing a life-threatening illness. Sharing the screen with icons like Sally Field and Shirley MacLaine, she earned her first Oscar nomination. But behind the scenes, director Herbert Ross was reportedly tough on her, pushing hard and leaving an emotional toll. It was a harsh introduction to Hollywood's pressure. Fortunately, everything changed in 1990 with Pretty Woman, where she played Vivian Ward. Julia lit up the screen and stole hearts worldwide. The film was a hit, and at just 22 years old, she earned her second Oscar award. And just like that, she officially became a global star. However, with fame came a new kind of pressure. Her relationships, breakups, and personal choices were suddenly front-page news. When she called off her engagement to Kiefer Sutherland just days before their wedding, the media frenzy was intense. Not long after, she surprised everyone by marrying country singer Lyle Lovett in a quick, private ceremony. The marriage lasted only 2 years, but the headlines lingered much longer. Still, through all the constant pressure, Julia kept her focus on work. Throughout the 1990s, she starred in several hit movies like Sleeping with the Enemy, The Pelican Brief, My Best Friend's Wedding, Notting Hill, and Runaway Bride. She became known for her ability to balance comedy and drama, and she embodied every role given to her. But as usual, Hollywood buzz wasn't always kind. Behind the scenes, there were whispers. Some insiders described her as guarded or difficult to work with. During the filming of Hook in 1991, where she played Tinkerbell, she reportedly clashed with the production team. Crew members began calling her Tinker Hell, and even director Steven Spielberg later admitted that the experience had been strained. It wasn't the last time Julia would clash with people on set. Some of that tension came from the fact that Julia wasn't afraid to say no, speak up, or walk away from roles that didn't feel right. In a male-dominated industry, this kind of confidence was often misunderstood and sometimes criticized, but it never stopped her. By the early 2000s, Julia Roberts had become one of the most bankable actresses in Hollywood. In 2001, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Erin Brockovich, playing a fierce legal assistant who takes on a major energy company. That same year, she became the first woman to earn $20 million for a single film. Through all the wins, the awards, and the headlines, Julia Roberts became one of the most powerful women in Hollywood. She earned respect, influence, and a legacy that few could match. But that success came with its own kind of weight. Not every set was easy. Not every co-star became a friend. And over the years, a handful of names quietly etched themselves into her story. Not because of what they gave her, but because of what they took. Respect, peace of mind, in some cases, trust. And for Julia, a few of those stories are finally ready to be told. So, who were the people who tested her the most? What moments still live quietly behind that iconic smile? Let's begin with the man who turned what should have been a light-hearted project into one of the toughest experiences of her early career. When administration turns to conflict. By the mid-1990s, Julia Roberts was at the height of her career. She had become the go-to star for romantic comedies, and in 1994, she signed on to lead I Love Trouble, a classic opposite-attract story. Julia played a sharp, ambitious reporter opposite Nick Nolte, known for his rugged charm and intense style. At first glance, they seemed like a perfect match, two big personalities who could bring both spark and wit to the screen. But once filming began, the chemistry that seemed so promising quickly gave way to real-life tension, and the story behind the scenes was far from romantic. Right from the beginning, things were awkward between the two. There was no chemistry whatsoever, just the silent treatment and a sense of distance that hung in the air the entire time. Crew members quietly took notice as the chemistry everyone hoped for failed to materialize. Off-camera, Julia and Nolte didn't get along. Their dynamic wasn't just cold, it was openly strained. A big part of the disagreement came down to how they worked. Julia was focused and intentional, coming to the set prepared and emotionally present. Nolte, on the other hand, preferred a looser, more unpredictable approach. He could be intense and, at times, dismissive of boundaries. For Julia, it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unprofessional. What was meant to be a fun romantic comedy ended up feeling more like a behind-the-scenes standoff. Eventually, the tension made its way into the public eye. In a rare moment of candor, Julia addressed the situation in an interview with the New York Times. "From the moment I met him, we gave each other a hard time," she said. "And naturally, we get on each other's nerves. He can be completely charming and very nice, but he's also completely disgusting." It was unusually blunt, coming from someone known for staying diplomatic. Something about that experience had pushed her past her limit. Nolte didn't let it slide. He fired back through the press, saying, "It's not nice to call someone disgusting, but she's not a nice person. Everyone knows that." What had once been quiet tension was now a full-blown public feud. The story quickly gained traction in the media, transforming I Love Trouble from a romantic comedy to a cautionary tale. As tensions grew, filming became more difficult. Julia and Nick Nolte reportedly avoided each other as much as possible, even using stand-ins for scenes where they were supposed to be face-to-face. The editing team had to work around their distance, and when the film hit theaters, audiences noticed. The chemistry felt off, the romance fell flat, and critics didn't hold back. The movie flopped, both critically and at the box office. For Julia, the experience was exhausting. She had dealt with difficult people before, but this was different. It felt personal, and it played out in the public eye. The project left her emotionally drained. Since then, both actors have avoided the topic, and neither has shown interest in working together again. When Tinker Bell lost her spark. When Julia Roberts joined the cast of Hook as Tinker Bell, it was meant to be another milestone in her already soaring career. But even before filming began, something felt off. Just days earlier, she had called off her highly publicized wedding to Kiefer Sutherland, and instead of walking down the aisle, she left the country with his close friend, actor Jason Patric. The tabloids exploded. Her heartbreak wasn't just personal, it became front-page drama. By the time she arrived on set, Julia was walking into one of the biggest productions of the year. Hook had a massive budget, elaborate sets, and a star-studded cast that included Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. But Julia's role was different. As Tinker Bell, she filmed most scenes alone, suspended in harnesses, surrounded by green screens. The work was physically demanding, emotionally draining, and offered little interaction with the rest of the cast, and the strain was visible. As they continued filming, the atmosphere on set started to feel different around her. Some crew members started speculating rumors, and they even gave her a nickname that quietly spread, Tinkerhell. Depending on who you asked, she was either struggling to cope with personal stress or becoming unusually hard to work with. Her scenes were often delayed, and she spent long hours alone in her trailer, waiting. Between the emotional weight she was carrying off set, the physical discomfort of the work, and the long stretches of isolation, the pressure started to seep into everything else. Even director Steven Spielberg, known for keeping calm on big productions, felt it. In a rare moment of honesty during a 1999 interview on 60 Minutes, he said, "It wasn't a great time for Julia and me to be working together." Just one sentence, but it said more than most full interviews. Spielberg rarely commented on tension behind the scenes, so for him to speak out meant something. And the silence that followed said even more. Julia and Spielberg never worked together again. When later asked if he'd consider directing her in the future, Spielberg simply said, "No comment." Coming from a director who had teamed up with stars like Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks multiple times, that quiet reply spoke volumes. The door had gently but firmly closed. Julia never spoke publicly about the experience, but those close to the production said she left the set emotionally drained. There were no arguments or dramatic exits. She simply stepped away and didn't look back, with a shared sense that this wasn't a creative partnership worth revisiting. In her way, Julia made it clear, Not every collaboration earns a second chance. She could handle tough co-stars and ruthless directors, but what happens when the pain comes from family? The rift that cut deeper than Hollywood drama. Not all of Julia Roberts' pain came from her Hollywood career. Some of it came from home, and one of the deepest wounds was her long emotional fallout with her older brother, Eric Roberts. It wasn't just a case of sibling rivalry. It was personal, it was painful, and for a long time, it seemed beyond repair. Back in the 1980s, Eric was the rising star in the family. He had already made a name for himself with bold performances in movies like Star 80 and Runaway Train. Julia looked up to him. He helped her get early auditions and connected her with people in the industry. But as Julia's career began to take off in the early 1990s, Eric's life started heading in the opposite direction. By the time Julia was starring in blockbuster hits like Pretty Woman, Eric was dealing with substance struggle and personal turmoil. Things got worse during a heated custody battle between Eric and his ex, Kelly Cunningham, over their daughter, Emma. Julia supported Kelly emotionally and financially. For Eric, it felt like betrayal. The trust they once had began to fall apart. Soon, their private rift became public. Tabloids picked up the story. Interviews hinted at bad blood. And when Julia married Danny Moder in 2002, Eric wasn't invited. That absence sent a loud message. The two were no longer close. Years passed, and the silence between them grew deeper. Eventually, Eric spoke out. He admitted that during those years, he wasn't easy to be around. He opened up about how personal struggles had affected his behavior and strained the people closest to him. In his memoir, Runaway Train, or The Story of My Life So Far, he went even further, saying he regretted claiming that Julia owed her success to him. He apologized. He called that moment selfish and said he hoped Julia would forgive. However, there wasn't any big family reunion, but they've been able to move past their differences. And with the help of their niece, Emma Roberts, who's made a name for herself in shows like American Horror Story and movies like We're the Millers, the distance between Julia and Eric began to ease. It didn't make headlines, but those around them noticed the change. Today, their relationship is better, but it's still private. They're not the kind of siblings who post tributes or pose for cameras together, but the anger that once defined their bond seems to have faded. What's left is something softer, more grown up, a quiet kind of peace built over time. The fallout with Juliana Margulies. Not every Hollywood story makes the front page. Some moments slip out quietly, shared in passing like a casual memory, but they still leave a lasting impression. That's what happened between Julia Roberts and Juliana Margulies. There was no buildup of tension or previously recorded fight, just one sentence that landed softly but stuck around longer than anyone expected. In 2010, Juliana Margulies appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman. At the time, she was best known for her roles on the medical drama ER and the legal series The Good Wife. During the interview, she shared a lighthearted story from her early years in New York, back when she was a struggling actress, waiting tables at a high-end Manhattan restaurant. Letterman asked her about some of the celebrities she had served, and that's when Julia Roberts came up. Margulies smiled and said, "Robert is lovely when you're not waiting on her." The crowd chuckled, but her honesty caught plenty of people off guard. It wasn't bitter or angry, but there was something about the delivery that made people pause. There were no follow-up stories, no clarifications, and no public reaction from Julia. But fans couldn't help but wonder what had really happened that night. If anything, it hinted at a small, awkward interaction that stuck with Margulies long enough to surface years later on national television. What made it even more interesting was that there's no known project that ever brought the two actresses together. They never worked on the same film or show, and their professional paths didn't seem to cross. Whatever happened must have taken place off the clock, likely during the early 90s, when Margulies was working as a waitress at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan, and Julia Roberts came in as a guest. According to Margulies, the interaction was brief, but left an impression. Julia, already a major star, wasn't particularly kind, and that small moment stuck. According to reports, Margulies did eventually bring it up to Julia in person. Julia, for her part, admitted she may not have been kind that evening and offered a sincere apology, even suggesting they go to dinner as a way to make things right. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, but it showed a quiet sense of accountability. The story didn't turn into gossip fodder, but it left behind something more personal. It reminded people that in Hollywood, where reputation travels fast, even small moments matter. A passing comment, a sharp tone, or an unkind night can leave a longer shadow than expected. This wasn't the most talked-about moment in Julia Roberts' public life, but in its own subtle way, it revealed something honest. Even brief encounters, especially when someone is still finding their footing, can shape how they remember you. And sometimes, those small moments don't need headlines to leave a lasting impression. The rough start behind her first big break. Before Julia Roberts became the queen of romantic comedies, she was just a young actress trying to find her footing. At only 21, she landed a role in Steel Magnolias, a heartfelt Southern drama filled with big actors like Sally Field, Dolly Parton, Shirley MacLaine, and Olympia Dukakis. Julia played Shelby, a spirited bride with a touching emotional story. Her performance turned heads, earning her an Academy Award nomination and putting her on Hollywood's radar. But behind the scenes, things weren't as good as they seemed. What looked like a big break on screen came with struggles Julia hadn't expected. A lot of that tension seemed to center around the film's director, Herbert Ross. He was already well known for big movies like Footloose and The Goodbye Girl, and had a reputation for being firm but fair. But with Julia, things felt different. Cast members later said he singled her out early, and his usual directness turned unusually sharp, less about the work and more about her. He didn't just question her performance, it felt like he questioned whether she even belonged there at all. Several of the older actresses on set noticed it. They had worked with tough directors before, but this felt excessive. Julia was still young and figuring things out. Instead of being supported, she found herself constantly criticized. Ross reportedly interrupted her during scenes, picked apart her line readings, and corrected her in front of the entire crew. For someone so new, the pressure was intense. People on set said she was often left shaken, and there were even days when she walked off set in tears. It didn't feel like tough love. It felt personal. What many people don't know is how the other women on set responded. Even with the difference in age and experience, they quietly stood by Julia. They could see how tough the environment had become, and while they couldn't change the director's behavior, they found small ways to lift her spirits. A kind word here, a supportive glance there, or just being present when things got tense. Their quiet solidarity helped her survive what must have felt, at times, like an emotional minefield. Julia has never publicly shared much about her relationship with Herbert Ross. She's spoken with pride about Steel Magnolias as a key moment in her career, but the behind-the-scenes struggles have stayed mostly private. It was her co-stars who later helped fill in the blanks, offering glimpses of a story that went far deeper. A story where a young actress, still finding her footing, nearly lost her balance before she ever got a chance to shine. Sadly, Herbert Ross passed away in 2001, and to this day, Julia has never spoken directly about what happened between them, but it clearly left a mark. You can see it in the way she moves through Hollywood, like someone who learned early that kindness isn't always guaranteed, and that confidence isn't handed out freely. Sometimes you have to build it yourself. Sometimes you have to fight for it. This wasn't a public feud, but in many ways, it became one of the key turning points in Julia's early career. It taught her how to hold her ground, how to protect her space, and how to survive in an industry that doesn't always play nice. Steel Magnolias earned her praise, no doubt, but it also came with a hard truth. Admiration can quickly turn into judgment, and in moments like that, it's not always the people in charge who get you through. Sometimes, the quiet backups can make a significant difference. She may no longer be trending on social media like she used to, and her red carpet appearances are fewer than before. But Julia Roberts' legacy isn't just alive, it's evolving. Present life. peace, privacy, and power. Now 56, Julia Roberts has reached a level of success in Hollywood that only a few stars ever achieve. She's no longer chasing headlines or battling the media to stay relevant. She's already done all that. She's checked every box: box office hits, global recognition, and critical acclaim. With an Academy Award for Erin Brockovich, 3 Golden Globes, and a long list of nominations, Julia Roberts has already proven everything she needed to. These days, what matters more to her is something deeper: having control over her personal life and protecting her peace of mind. She's embraced a slower, more intentional way of living, a steady life, grounded and quietly powerful, not because she faded from the spotlight, but because she decided exactly where she wanted to shine. When Julia married cinematographer Danny Moder in 2002, she made a deliberate choice, not just to settle down, but to step away from the constant chaos of Los Angeles. Together, they moved to Taos, New Mexico, where they raised their 3 children, Hazel, Phineas, and Henry. Far from the paparazzi and flashing lights, it wasn't about disappearing from the world. It was about building a life where what mattered most, family, privacy, and peace, could truly thrive. Over the years, Julia has shared a few quiet glimpses into that life. She's talked about cooking at home, laughing around the breakfast table, tending to her garden, and spending slow, meaningful days with her family. She's also opened up about going to therapy, learning to set boundaries, and realizing that saying no can be just as powerful as saying yes. For someone who once carried the weight of being America's sweetheart, this chapter has been about finding balance and finally living life on her terms. However, Julia never truly stepped away from acting. She simply became more intentional about the roles she chose. In 2022, she reunited with George Clooney for Ticket to Paradise, a warm romantic comedy that reminded audiences why she became a household name. That same year, she took a more serious turn in Homecoming, a dark, slow-burning series that showcased a deeper, more restrained side of her craft. Both roles made one thing clear: she still has that unmistakable spark. Behind the scenes, Julia's influence has grown in quieter but meaningful ways. She's become a steady mentor to younger actresses, offering support in an industry that can be tough to navigate. She backs women-led productions, speaks out on fair pay, and chooses her projects with care. These might seem like subtle choices, but they've helped change the way Hollywood sees female strength, seeing it less as something attention-seeking and more as thoughtful, grounded, and real. There's still something insiders call the Julia Roberts effect. It's the kind of screen presence that makes you stop and watch, whether she's smiling, saying nothing, or just walking into a scene. It's not just about beauty or talent. It's about the feeling she brings every time she shows up. Whether you saw Pretty Woman in theaters years ago or just discovered it online, her impact still holds. And the truth is, that kind of connection with an audience doesn't fade easily. She has also become more open about aging, self-worth, and what true success looks like. In a culture that clings to youth, Julia isn't trying to turn back time. Instead, she's showing that growing older can come with grace, strength, and purpose, that you don't have to be the center of attraction to make a lasting impact. Of course, the names she clashed with are still part of her story. They helped shape her, but they never defined her. And maybe that's the real twist. Julia Roberts didn't just survive Hollywood, she changed it on her own terms. And that leaves us with a question that still lingers. Did Julia truly find peace with the people who hurt her? Or did she simply choose to move on for the sake of her own sanity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.